everybody, and welcome to the next episode of our Recruitment Revolution podcast. My name's Kelly Dunn. I'm the director for KD Recruitment, and we support businesses across North and East Yorkshire to find suitable talent within their temporary, permanent and contract roles. I'm delighted today to be joined by Laura Mason, who is the CEO of NYBEP, who are based in York. So welcome, Laura. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Nice to be joining you.
So to explain to our listeners, you and I have worked together for a number of years already. So NYBEP is the North Yorkshire Business Enterprise Partnership. And you work a lot with sort of schools and colleges across the whole region, don't you? So I first started working with NYBEP probably about 5 or 6 years ago, supporting and going into some of the schools that you guys work with and supporting some of the students there with workshops, mock interviews, careers fairs and things like that. So do you want to give a bit more of an overview in terms of more of the detail about what NYBEP do and some of the great work that you guys have been doing recently?
Yeah, I can do, and we'll do it as we go along. So NYBEP is and stands for North Yorkshire Business and Education Partnership, and we work with schools and businesses to develop skills, inspire and nurture talent for tomorrow's workforce. And really, we are involved with thousands and thousands of young people across the county and a bit wider to help them prepare for the world of work. And it's all the things that you would usually expect. So we get involved in facilitating thousands of work experience placements for young people. So last year we facilitated about 6,000 work experience placements. We get involved in everything that you've mentioned already, Kelly, sort of careers fairs, helping people with mock interviews, CV writing. But we also work with a lot of schools to break down a lot of stereotypes and barriers. So get involved particularly with around about science, technology, engineering, and maths. And I've just met you at the very successful engineering week that we had over in Scarborough, where we had 3,000 young people through the door. To experience lots and lots of employers showing lots of areas of their businesses that young people can get involved with. So yeah, we probably engage with around about 50,000 learners every year across the patch.
Yeah, and I think the work that you guys have been doing has been phenomenal, and there's been some sort of key projects that you've had funding for. So I know Anglo American in Scarborough, you've delivered some key projects for them, haven't you?
Anglo's a huge supporter of NYBEP, and we work with them through a number of avenues. We work with them through some funding that they have to inspire young people into STEM careers, and also through their Achieve programme. We work with them closely. And they're working with some young people over on the coast and up to Redcar and Cleveland. So a very exciting project. And Anglo are a huge sponsor of and advocate of NYBEP.
Fantastic. And I think the important thing that we're going to cover as part of this podcast, I think, is the importance of engaging with young people. As you quite rightly said, they're the talent of tomorrow. These kids are going to run our country in the future. They're going to run our companies and our organisations. So if we work hard on supporting them while they're in education and getting them work ready, then they are going to be better prepared for the world of work when they reach kind of the age of maturity, whether that's after school and college or after university. I think the first thing for me is that one of the things that I found when I first started working with you guys was my son was doing his options at school, and he didn't know what he wanted to be when he grew up, and neither did his friends. And they were having to make this really, really important decision about, well, what subjects should I take? And he didn't want to do a language. He wasn't particularly very good at languages. So we had a conversation about, well, why not look at things that you're interested in and the subjects that you are good at, and we can go from there and see what comes from that. So I hope he doesn't mind me saying that we discussed at the time he was quite creative. So he did music, and he was already playing the guitar, but he thought he would be interested in doing media. Now that has led to him doing media at GCSE, getting a distinction star at GCSE. He then went to college and he did a BTEC in media at college and got a distinction at college, and he's now at Salford University doing TV and radio production, which all came from him choosing a topic at school that he was interested in and has kind of gone from there. Now, I'm not somebody who thinks that everybody should go to university. I never went to university. I went straight out into the world of work, and I ended up doing a bit of night school, doing secretarial courses and things like that. And personally, I think you do what works best for you. Some people are academic and, continue in academia, and other people aren't. They want to do a more practical route, which can go down in the world that we're in now. It's more the apprenticeship route, isn't it? And I think probably the first and the biggest, chunkiest topic for us to talk about is the new government and their proposed changes to work experience, the apprenticeship levy, and all these kind of things, because I think, many of our clients who are watching or listening to this will be sat there going, I am not sure what's happening and what do we do? So shall we try and unpick that a bit?
Well, we can try, but the devil's in the detail, and we're still a bit light on the detail. But the government have proposed reintroducing 2 weeks worth of work experience for all young people. And we've still got a little bit of detail to sort of flesh out there. But I think what's fair to say is it will not be, and we do know, it won't be as it was in the past through traditional work experience where everyone goes out on a 2-week block period. That's absolutely not going to be the case. There is a model being piloted in Manchester at the moment called the Manchester Baccalaureate, and it includes this work experience element of it. And what that looks like at the moment is a series of interventions between young people and businesses throughout almost their secondary career, really. So sort of from year 7 up to and including sort of maybe year 13. And it might be that it's a day out at businesses. It might mean that businesses are coming into school. It might be that there's some online virtual sort of communication with businesses. It might be there's a project. It might be there's an experience of a workplace. And then it might be there's a work experience. So at the moment, it looks to be there's 2 different things and all will add value. But I think at the moment, government have got to think about how they do that for everybody. And it will have to be a blended solution that maybe has a little bit of tweaking for rural areas, maybe a little bit different in urban areas. So again, I think they're just finalising some of the detail. But what's obvious and needed is that employer engagement in this whole process.
And I think the challenge for many employers, and I see that a lot when we've got heavy manufacturing and engineering in North Yorkshire and over in East Yorkshire, there's a lot of health and safety risks around being able to accept work experience students into the business. And I know that when this headline was first announced, many businesses sort of sat there and said, well, I struggle to be able to allow them in for 1 week, let alone 2. I don't know how that's going to work. And then there's many businesses that don't do work experience at all. Are the government proposing, because they were talking about this is going to be compulsory for every student as well. So what sort of statistics are we looking at the moment in terms of how many students actually take up work experience? Because I know it's not 100%, is it? It's actually a lot lower than that.
It's nothing like 100% actually. So it's very low, and it does depend on where you live and what school you go to be honest. So it is varied across the patch. And again, I think I'm just trying to look at some of my notes here. Again, there is a bit of a difference between experiences of the workplace and work experience. So, young people will be getting quite a variety of experiences, really. But I think one of the important myths we've got to break down is there really is no barriers to getting involved in this. Yeah. So even if you were a huge manufacturing organisation, there is always a way that we can make sure that they are involved in school, really. So I think that's one of the most important things that NYBEP does do is we are that broker between employers and education. So if there is ever any concerns about what employers think they can offer and want to, then we can always have that conversation and say to them, let's talk about it and let's see what we can do. At the moment, they're using a key phrase at the moment of looking at a universal model of compliance. And I think that's really important, isn't it? We've got to make sure that across each of the schools and the areas that there is really that universal model of compliance. And I think that's probably important. And once that and the detail of that comes out, then we can share that with employers. But there shouldn't be any barrier really to asking young people to come into work or, asking employers to go out and visit.
And I think the thing for me with this is, like you say, if we think outside the box and go, okay, so there might be health and safety risks that they can't come into your factory, absolutely fine. But if you're then saying, there could be experiences of the workplace that they could get involved in. So it might be like, say, that the employer goes into the school and talks to them, all these projects and things, which are quite good ideas. So they can come up with a project and a group of students can work on something, can't they, for a short period of time and put that proposal back to the business, whether that's maybe like a little marketing campaign or a poster they design or, a little bit of R&D in simple forms or whatever it might be. And, and it's giving the kids kind of experience of different things that you would do within different types of jobs as well. So I think there's lots of opportunity with this. And if the government have said that it's from year 7 onwards, I think that's a big impact because we're used to work experience being year 10, year 11. So for a business to go, well, what impact can I have with a year 7 student? And actually, you mentioned earlier on about Science and Engineering Week that we were part of fairly recently. And one of the things that does is there are secondary schools that come, but you have a day dedicated to primary schools as well. Can you tell me the impact of why the primary touch points are as important as this secondary? Because I think this is a fairly new thing that people are kind of seeing, going, well, year 5 and 6, they're not thinking about careers or anything yet.
Well, they should be, shouldn't they? I suppose there is key things that young people already, biases that are made very early on. And it's really important that we break down some of those biases. And we see that playing out through young people's lives. So it is important to come in a bit earlier and break down some of those biases. But, when I'm speaking to businesses, particularly, because we've got like HR backgrounds, haven't we? So when I speak to businesses, this is their future workforce and Generation Alpha that are coming through at the moment. So never mind X and Y, this is Generation Alpha coming through. They do want something a little bit different. So as much as employers are giving something to young people, every time I see an employer engage with a young person, they do get something back. Even it sparks a discussion or sparks something. And, we've spoken before about, employers needing to very definitely move some of their processes so that they can now mix with that next generation and make sure that, and we know the CIPD are very keen on that, to make sure that employers are ready and that their practices are up to date and in, attracting the best talent, because we know that they have to attract the best talent, really. So we need to be listening to what young people are saying. What do they want from an employer? And what it is you and I know it's fantastic that young people get to see those employers, recognize those brands, know those areas, and actually want to work in those companies.
Yeah, and I think that was evident at Engineering Week, seeing how engaged these primary school children were and looking at jobs that they didn't even know existed yet with companies they'd never heard of, and to see those little light bulbs light up above their heads. But then actually, like you say, the employers who were having those conversations with the kids, you get to them before a lot, like you say, a lot of the bias kicks in. And when they're teenagers, there's a lot more peer pressure, a lot more outside involvement in their decision making. When they are very young, you can be the person that inspires them to become an engineer. Whereas the only job that they'd ever heard of before was a policeman or a fireman or a doctor or a vet. Or it could be And this is the thing that I'm quite passionate about, is we have in North Yorkshire, we have a lot of areas of deprivation. And through no fault of their own, a lot of the students who live in those areas may have family members who are not supportive, who they might have family members who don't work, you know, mums and dads that don't work, uncles and aunties that don't work. So they don't come from an environment where a career is the norm. And doing something like this could make them believe that they could be that engineer or that zookeeper at Flamingo Land, or the accountant within an accountancy practice, because they've been inspired from a young age.
We find that most families absolutely want the best for their young people, and they really are very supportive. And it's just us working together to make sure that everybody's aware of all the opportunities. And you and I learn something every time we go to one of these events, don't we? So it's just making sure that we can pass that on to everybody, really. But I don't know a family that doesn't want the best for their young people. And we're here to support that and make sure that they've got, all people have got access. So we've done parents' evenings, haven't we? And we've done, we've done all sorts of stuff. We've brought teachers in as well, and teacher encounters to make sure teachers are up to date with what's happening as well. So really, I'm quite keen on the phrase, it takes a village. And it really does take us all to come together, doesn't it? To make sure and young people, they're inspiring in themselves, really. So it's just making sure that we're pulling together to all work to make sure that everyone's got access to as much as information, up-to-date information, as they possibly can.
Definitely. And I think the other side of this, and you've mentioned about the teachers, because there are, from an education perspective, the teachers have these things called Gatsby benchmarks, don't they? And certain ones of certain Gatsby benchmarks are linked to careers, aren't they? So can you explain a little bit more about what they are?
I'll try. So the Gatsby benchmarks were set up, and really what they've done is they've been quite revolutionary. They've been developed on behalf of the Gatsby Foundation by Professor, I think his name's Sir John Holman. And really what they wanted to do was they wanted to start to have a look at what does good careers provision look like, and how do we try and standardise it, really. So they set up these benchmarks, and the benchmarks are all around about making sure that schools can really mark themselves against each of these benchmarks to see if they've got a good careers programme, they're getting involved with labour market information, they're addressing the needs of each of the students, they're linking the curriculum to each of the areas of the careers. They're making sure they've got encounters with employers. They're looking at work experience or experiences of the workplace. They're looking at higher education, and they're also looking at personal guidance. So there's like 8 benchmarks that Professor John Holman has had a look at and developed. And each of the schools now sort of assess themselves against that. And what's been found is schools are really striving to make sure it's better and better and better. And each of their schools more recently have scored themselves increasingly against these benchmarks. So what it's done is it's really sort of set the scene to say, right, I'm going to really try and excel at this, and this is what good looks like and how to do. And then, of course, everyone's sharing good practice as well. So it is really important. So what does good careers look like in school? We've now got a picture, and now we're taking it to say, right, how do we grow on that, make it better?
Brilliant. And I think, and this is the thing that I think employers want to know, because if they want to engage with the school, and maybe the school haven't necessarily come back, it's an organisation like NYBEP that is that conduit. And it's knowing that we're all on the same page. So the schools have got these benchmarks that they are scoring themselves against, that, careers provision and the support that the business world can give to them and support with that growth of their students is something that is very, very important to them, and is getting more and more important as time moves on. Like, the schools are very passionate about this now. So because we know now that the schools want to do better with this provision, and having somebody like yourselves at NYBEP that are working alongside those schools, then businesses can get involved in lots of different ways. I think the thing that I find interesting, and we did a podcast with Phil Pond recently. So for anybody who hasn't listened to that one already, go back and listen to the podcast with Phil Pond and we're talking about market insights, and we're talking about jobs that don't even exist yet, and all that kind of thing. And for me, the way that we're in this technological revolution at the moment, and tech is, excelling at quite a rapid rate. So this kind of next generation of talent, that generation alpha, the jobs that they are going to be doing in the future don't exist yet. So it's very hard for us to go, we're going to train you to be X, when that job, when you're 25, may look very different to what it looks like today. Or the job that you're going to end up doing may not exist yet. It might be something completely different. So I think the thing that we can do at the moment is go, well, actually, how do we maybe get them work ready? And I sort of see, having worked with yourselves, we speak to schools quite a lot, listening to what employers are wanting. It's a lot more of that sort of softer skills that the next generation, and they don't necessarily have yet. And it's those things like the communication skills, maybe timekeeping and attendance, presentation, answering phones.
Yeah, a fantastic model that we are aware of is, and I think what we're classing them as is essential skills now. And there's a fantastic model from a company called Skills Builder. And the Skills Builder have actually had a look at like a framework that they feel are 8 key skills. And it's very much the things that you were talking about. So it's listening skills, speaking skills, problem solving, creativity, teamwork, staying positive. So they've got a set of 8 benchmarks really on this framework that schools and employers can have a look at. And it really sort of drills down into some of those essential skills. And I think that's a very, very important role that we can all play to support young people.
And I think that's the key thing, is that, when I speak to businesses and they say, we've taken on an apprentice and they're not work ready. So then I always pose the question back and go, okay, so, do you work with schools or colleges? What do you do as a business to support these students, to get them work ready, whether they're going to come to you or go somewhere else? And if that business isn't doing anything, and then neither's the business down the road, and then the business down the road, we all have to take accountability and go, well, if nobody is engaging with these students, how are they going to know what work ready means? So I think it is taking responsibility.
You're right. And I think the important thing for sometimes businesses to appreciate is schools are under an immense amount of pressure. Their timetable is very, very, valuable and restricted. So they've got a lot to cram into that timetable, really. And of course, we need to figure out how can we help them in the most effective way. And sometimes it doesn't always have to be in careers lessons. It can maybe be jumping into a science lesson, jumping into a maths lesson, jumping into other lessons. And I think that's incredibly valuable as well. So sometimes when you speak to businesses, they're like, oh, I can't do the career stuff. Maybe it doesn't need to be the career stuff. Maybe you could just do a workshop in science or a workshop there. And actually, it's so valuable to the young people to try and support schools in the best way we can. And it's just trying to get that understanding between schools and employers.
And I think that's it, because, you and I have had meetings with many a school leader, and the school leaders sit there and go, we want to engage more with the business community. They don't necessarily know how to, because they're education and we're businesses, which is where you guys come in, but they do want to engage more. They want the local businesses to come in and give their students that exposure to what the world of work looks like, what businesses are on the doorstep, and I know, there's certain areas where the schools are in areas of deprivation, and those kids have never stepped outside of where that school is based, and they don't know some of the businesses that are around the corner. But if those businesses come into the school, it's opening up the eyes of the students and letting them see that, the possibilities are there for them. I think the challenges are trying to get everybody on the same page. And that's the biggest challenge at the moment, is, like you say, education and teachers, their time is precious. They've got lesson plans, they've got the reports they've got to do, they've got to measure everything. Obviously, the funding that they get is to deliver education. So the idea of maybe, as you say, going into a science lesson and doing something along that is a fantastic idea. Are there certain things that the schools want to do more of? So some of the, I'm just thinking of, some of the key funding and things that you've been delivering on is helping some of the students who are maybe underprivileged or maybe falling out of education and employment and things like that. So I know that that's something that the government have talked a lot about, isn't it? Is improving. I mean, you could probably eloquently describe it better than me, but improving their lives so that they are less likely to fall out of education and employment, isn't it?
I think there's a big number, and I'm frightened to say it because in case I get it incorrect, but there is a large number of young people that are classed as NEET, and that is not in education, employment, or training, and that number has been steadily growing. So we know that young people are struggling to engage, and what might happen is that they are at risk of disengaging, and then they're almost not in education, employment, or training. And we know that if a young person has 4 or more encounters with an employer, there's something like 86% less likely to become NEET. It's a staggering statistic. So if they start to engage with employers, so you can see the benefit of young people remaining in education or training or employment. So it is important, but they do, and government have put, recently some money into helping those young people that are struggling in school, maybe have low attendance, maybe have a couple of barriers. How do we start to engage them? And it's very important work. It's good work, important work, and all employers can be involved in that in a greater or lesser extent.
And I think that goes back to what we said at the beginning. So, if we're looking at this 2 weeks of experience of the workplace in whatever shape or form that looks like over the course of a 5 or 6 year school period, if there is a large proportion of these students who are possibly going to become NEET, and there are 4 encounters, and maybe that's 1 encounter per school year,
yep,
then 86% of those kids are less, they're going to stay within education, employment, or training, and that's our future workforce. If we don't, as a business community, engage and do these things, then all these kids are going to fall out of and fall through the gaps. And that's our workforce.
And hopefully what it'll be is a little bit more planned and a little bit more structured. So it might be, and sometimes I think we can be a bit guilty of everything happening in that summer term, can't we? So maybe we'll start to see it sort of go over the year. Maybe we'll see it, across the academic year. So it'll be a bit easier for businesses to plan. Maybe we'll know what's happening. And I hope there is still, I fundamentally believe in a work experience placement. I wouldn't be doing the job I'm doing if I didn't believe in that. But I still fundamentally believe in a work experience placement. But I think all of it has a place. So I'd really like to see, them going out on days, employers coming in. I'd like to see a little bit of virtual, a little bit of digital. I'd still like to see a work experience placement. As many kids as we can get out to businesses in some form, I think is hugely important. And it's not, like we spoke about the essential skills, it's not always it needs to be a deep dive into their career. It can be many things that it shows young people. So I think there is a place for everything here.
Absolutely. And it shows how the world is evolving as well. We're in a world of technology where I know, my son plays on his Xbox, and he speaks to his friends every single day through the Xbox, but he might not see them. And therefore your friends can be all over the world, and you could have a best friend in China, for instance. And, you and I come from a generation of that's a virtual world and this is the real world. And, this generation are going, well, it's just one world.
Yeah.
I've met somebody who lives in Mexico, and we've been dating online for X amount of time, or my best friend is in Australia, or and so for them, they don't know any different. This is just the world that they've grown up in and the world that they live in. So absolutely, when you look at work experience, the jobs are evolving. So not every job is in an office. Some jobs will be a virtual job, a work from home job, a job that you work in different locations in the world. And so therefore, why wouldn't the experiences of the workplace have that as well? So I think you're absolutely right. Doing lots of different types of experience, I think, is going to have more benefit to these students than just it's not a one shoe fits all process. So we took a work experience student through yourselves last year from a secondary school, and when he came, I said to him, why did you choose us? Now, this particular school was more of a technology-based school, and we're recruitment. And he was very honest, and he said, well, I didn't, to be honest. He said, I tried to find my own work experience. Ideally, I want to go into the Marines after education. So, I tried to approach like the fire brigade and, things like that were more physical roles, but he couldn't get that experience. So he was given the option from the school of, I think it was either going to like a dental surgery or us. And bless him, he chose us. And I did say to him at the time, I think I would have chosen us as well, if I'm honest. Working in a dentist is not for me. But we tried to make his week. So we had him for a week, and we tried to make it as interesting as possible. This is a student who's 15 years old. Recruitment is not what he wants to do when he grows up. It's not even been on his periphery. He didn't even know what recruitment was. He just knew that this was an office job. And we gave him exposure to all elements of the role. He spent a different day with different people in the business. And he was lovely, and he was really engaging, and he gave lots of suggestions, and he joined in with conversations. And we thought, well, he's had a great week, and we got a nice box of chocolates off him and a thank you card, and it was really lovely. And then a few weeks ago, we'd already said we would have another work experience from the same school. And we got a call a couple of weeks ago just to confirm the details of our work experience student, and it's the same student who's asked to come back.
Wow.
So when they said, oh, your new student has got X name, and I'm like, that's the same person who came last year. And they said, oh yeah, he's asked for you specifically. And it's not even like we're expecting him to want a career in recruitment. If he wants to go in the Marines, that's absolutely fine. But actually, we've had a positive impact on his work experience, that he's gone, I'm happy to go back there and do it all again. And that kind of what we said at the beginning of, you can inspire these kids and you can make a real difference to their lives. He wouldn't be coming back if he hadn't had a great week. And actually for us, it's my team especially, because we were all involved and he spent a day with each person. He's inspired them to go, well, what can we do with him this time, and how can we change it up a bit, and what different things can we get him involved in, because he's been once before, so he knows half of it already, and what else can we do this time? So they're excited now for him coming back in a few weeks, and the challenges that we're going to have in terms of how do we make it different, how do we show him things that he's not seen before. So it's one person. We've inspired one person. But if every single person, if every single company inspires one child, then we're inspiring a generation, aren't we?
Amazing. It's lovely to hear, actually. And, it's interesting because when I talk to businesses, particularly if they've got any level of sort of managers in there, and they talk about sort of managers and their communication skills, there is nothing better than honing your communication skills than talking to a 15-year-old. And I thoroughly encourage every single business manager to get out there and talk to a group of 15-year-olds, because it will very quickly hone your skills and be able to make sure that you're communicating effectively. And that's exactly what you need to do, because they're going to bring something to you as well, aren't they? So you're already thinking and planning, how will I communicate with this young person? How do I? And that's really valuable learning for your business, because those are the people that are coming in. And I think, we've got to recognize it's a bit of a two-way process, really, isn't it? You might not see an immediate benefit from it, but I mean, we will do in the long run.
And I think they've got lots of ideas because it's a different generation.
Wonderful.
And I think, we're the last generation of people that we've straddled no technology and everything is technology. We remember a time before the internet and before mobile phones. No phones, no internet. Or when we had internet, it was dial-up, so you couldn't use your landline because you had dial-up internet and all this kind of thing. And I try and explain that to my kids, and they look at me like I'm talking a foreign language. My daughter thinks Alexa's her friend. She talks to Alexa as if it's an actual person in her bedroom. And then she comes down and she's like, Mummy, why won't Alexa play such and such a song? As if I know the reason why, and it's like, I don't know. She's not a person. But this is the world that they're growing up in. And actually, the ideas that they have are going to change the world. The way that they think is different to the way that we think. I had a conversation with a business recently, and we were talking about this generation and the lack of communication skills because nobody will pick up the phone. And I sat there and they were saying, you know, they'd had the younger generation come and work before, college leavers, whatever age it might be. And they said, but the challenge that we've got is if the phone rings, they won't pick it up. Now, I was in this meeting for at least an hour, maybe 2, and I never heard the phone ring once.
Yeah.
So I posed the question to them and said, how often does your phone actually ring?
Who uses the phone?
Who uses the phone?
Yeah.
How do you actually communicate with people? We have Teams, and we have email, and we have WhatsApp. And actually, how many times do you need that person to pick up the phone? If they can communicate effectively in a different way, does that actually matter? But I think we get stuck in a rut of going, I need somebody who can pick up the phone because that's what we've always done. Yeah, a student can come in and go, but did you know we can do this instead? Yeah. Did you know you could, you know, and when I had this work experience student, I was like, you need to do some suggestions for me for our social media because they live in that world. I was like, so when we're looking at TikTok, we've now joined TikTok. And my administrator is all over TikTok. So she gives me the ideas, I record the videos, because it's that thing of, that's her generation. Yeah. She's all over it. I'm not. I am now, I've had to. But at the time, I dabbled in lockdown. But before lockdown, I was like, I've no idea what TikTok is. But
and I think that's a really important point you make, because we'd run a program a few years ago, and it was called Energy Meets Experience. And what we did was we matched up young people with the older generation in the workforce, because I think it's not going to be long before we've probably got about 4 generations in our workforce, isn't it? That's what's going to happen. That's what's happening. So we did a great project between young people and I think it was the over 50s we looked at, and we matched them up. And what an electric pairing it was, that energy meeting that experience. And it was a fantastic match. We did it in, I think, engineering companies initially. But it was a great pairing. And, you know, if you think about it, the experience that those people were able to add to the younger people was fantastic. And I think you're right. I think it's just looking at your business in those dynamics, isn't it? And thinking, what can I do if I'm going to have this many generations in my business? And how can I get everybody cohesively working together?
Yeah. And that project that you just worked on, we've been promoting a similar thing a lot. There's a few of our clients a few years ago that did it as a reverse mentoring scheme.
Yes.
And it worked really, really well. So I talk about that a lot, where you have got an aging workforce, and you've got a skills gap, and then you've got this younger generation coming through on apprenticeships or, you know, trainees. And instead of just having the older showing the younger ones, actually do a reverse mentoring scheme, because bridging that gap of, I've got the over 55s who want me to pick up the phone and give them a call and tell them what's going on, and you've got the younger generation that send me a WhatsApp. That's fine. I'll check it whenever I check it. They all want to communicate in different ways. They want different things out of the job. So the older generation are, I want this job until I retire. I want to know what my pension is. I want the right benefits. The younger generation are, this is a stepping stone for me. What flexibility can I have? I'm happy to work from home. I might want to do yoga on my lunchtime. Can I travel as part of this job? They want different things. But as a business and as a business leader, you're sat there in the middle going, I've got to bridge this gap somehow.
I've got to please everybody.
I've got to please everybody. So how do I do that?
Yeah.
And then you've got the older generation that learn one way and the younger generation that learn a different way. So the reverse mentoring and doing what you've just done is a great way of showing that they can learn from each other. And it has made a massive impact.
Yeah, I think the other thing we wanted to discuss as well, and we sort of spoke about, is supported internships. What I see is a lot of value in businesses getting involved in supported internships to help either neurodiverse young people or others with some barriers, and that's been actually very, very rewarding. And I noticed there are some really good providers locally that will work with businesses to get, some, and businesses are finding very, very valuable if they've got those tasks that, neurodiverse people can work on. They're adding great value as well. So I think you're right. I think it's looking at all parts of your business and all parts of the economy and thinking, how can we mingle everything together so that, it's all working effectively.
Yeah, and with the neurodiversity side of it, and it's something I'm very passionate about, and we've done roundtables on neurodiversity in the workplace. I've written a white paper on it. I write loads of blogs about it. So for me, it's one of those important things. And actually, when I've done a lot of research into this, one of the interesting things is Microsoft have a particular department within IT, and they grow their own neurodiverse talent. So instead of an interview, they give you a task to do. And it might be, come in and do a bit of coding and build this piece of software or whatever it might be. And it's all through that support and nurturing the talent. And the whole department is neurodiverse because actually what makes them neurodiverse gives them the superpower to be exceptional at the job that they are doing. And they are the exceptional talent for that particular job.
Absolutely.
And it's phenomenal what they do. And I think there are, I read a thing, I think SAP as a software provider, they did it. There was somebody like the RAC or AA or something, they had a big project around neurodiverse talent. But actually, it's looking at going, well, these people can be exceptional and exceptionally talented, better than you and I in certain areas. I knew a history teacher once, and they had a photographic memory, and they were phenomenal at teaching history because of the memory and the recollection of all the dates and the facts and all that information. And they were so passionate about it because that was their thing, that, any question that a student asked them, they could answer because of the neurodiversity that they had. And it was just amazing. And it is an untapped talent pool.
It really is. We did an event recently, actually. So we did a quiet event at Scarborough Science and Engineering Week, where again we were thinking about neurodiverse young people, and we held one recently on the coast with Legrand, and they were helping us. So they've also been championing, neurodiverse, and it was a careers fair for neurodiverse young people. And I think you're right. I think it's really. It is, and we did call it untapped potential, actually, because that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, and I think they deserve the right to work as well.
Yeah.
And when you are looking at, I want the best person for this job, the best person for the job is the person who, yes, you want to kind of look at recruiting on attitude and behaviours. I get that. But when certain jobs require certain skills and you need somebody who has got the eye for detail and the super skills to do that job efficiently, do it quickly. But the positives of somebody who's neurodiverse is your retention will be higher. Because the challenges they face in putting themselves forward for a job and going through the interview process means that they're not going to be jumping ship after 1 year doing something else, because actually they don't like change. So they will want to stay.
Yeah, I noticed, I think it was John Lewis that's recently advertised that they would be doing they're going to sort of publish their interview questions, aren't they, beforehand, to make sure that neurodiverse. Yeah, and I think that's a really positive step forward. Yeah.
Well, I've talked about this a lot. When I saw that, I thought it was amazing, and it's for everybody.
Yeah.
So they publish their interview questions in advance for you to prepare your answers. And for me, I think this is great, because an interview is for you to showcase the best of you, to show that you can do that job.
It's quite a false environment, isn't it? It's not, you sometimes want to leave there and go, I'm not really like that, actually.
Yeah. And, and if you can be the best person for the job, but crumble because of the nerves in an interview. Whereas if you can prepare thoroughly, you can think about all these times when you've done certain things that you want to get across in that interview. So for me, I think it's a win-win. There are businesses that I've pulled up on this where they've gone, yeah, well, they're preparing too much. And I'm like, why are you trying to catch them out in an interview then? Do you not want to hire these people?
Yeah.
This is a positive. If you want to catch them out, your attitude to interviewing is the wrong attitude to interview. Why would you not want them to be prepared? It's the same thing as if you say to somebody, prepare me a presentation. You don't put them on the spot in an interview and go, right, stand up there and do a presentation for 10 minutes on birds. You tell them to go away and prepare it and bring it back. So why would they not be allowed to prepare this? Certain organisations already would maybe go, you might be doing an interview and the questions might be based around our values. So that can help you prepare. But the fact that John Lewis are actually publishing the questions, I think is a great idea.
Yeah.
And actually, I think if somebody hasn't done something before, but that they're going to ask you, can you tell me a time when you've dealt with a difficult customer? And maybe you haven't dealt with a difficult customer, but you know that question's coming up. It gives you the chance to think about, well, how would I deal with it then?
Yeah.
So if that situation did happen, how would I maybe deal with that? So you can think about what you would do. There's a lot of conversations around, should you ask competency questions about the past, or should you ask scenario questions based on the job they might come in to do to see how they would deal with that situation as well?
Yeah.
So, I think interview styles in that way are changing. And when we kind of look at like going into schools and working with students and things like that and saying, right, well, we want to get them interview ready. We want to make sure that they've got a good CV, that actually they know how to communicate in an interview, and, they know what to wear, and they know about body language and, and those kind of things. As interviews evolve, these students won't know that they're evolving if we don't go in and show them that they're evolving.
Absolutely.
And it's funny because when we were at Science and Engineering Week, one of the tasks that we had was getting the kids to choose what they thought was an appropriate outfit to wear for an interview and what's not appropriate. And quite a lot of them put trainers with a suit or trainers with a pair of trousers. And again, it shows that generational shift of our trainers more appropriate now than what they used to be. And we had some of the teachers there, and the teachers were dressed in trainers, maybe jeans, shirt, whatever. And they were saying, well, I wear trainers every day for work, so I can see where the kids are coming from. However, if I was going for an interview, would I put a pair of shoes on? But actually, if we think of 10 years' time, would trainers be classed as inappropriate?
Well, I don't think so. I think they can wear trainers, but I guess that's my own personal opinion. And I wear trainers with a suit, so it's fine. And it's, like you say, it's just different things, isn't it, for different businesses? Yeah.
And I think, as we evolve, because a lot of businesses have gone quite casual in dress codes as well since COVID.
Yeah.
And so therefore, what you would wear to an interview. So what we educate students that they should wear for an interview is very different today to what it used to be, 17 years ago when I first started my recruitment career. And that was very corporate. Whereas now you can be smart, but you don't have. Yeah, absolutely. Although I did speak to a HR manager recently who said they were running an assessment day for potential apprentices. And they'd invited them all in. They never said that there was a dress code, but they're like, this is an assessment interview. And as a business, they have quite a casual dress code, but they dress smart. The HR and the directors were dressed smart because they wanted to give the best first impression to these young learners. And they said that one young learner came in dressed in what can only be described as a pair of pajamas and a pair of trainers.
Oh.
And, like this matching coordinating set that looked like PJs. And the HR manager sort of went through the assessment, did the interviews at the end of it, and had to sort of question, and she said that he kind of thought, I don't think I've hit the mark with what I'm wearing today.
Oh, bless him.
So I think they do need advice and guidance, because you don't want anybody turning up to an interview in a pair of pajamas, really.
No.
So I think it's working with them, and if enough businesses support students and will work with them in terms of how their business is evolving and their expectations are evolving, then the kids will go along with that, won't they?
And there is many business benefits. There is big reasons to do this. It's not just CSR, although that is very important too, but there are real business benefits. It adds to the bottom line. Like you say, they're inspiring, they come up with ideas. There's lots and lots of business reasons to get involved with young people in schools.
Yeah, and that's, to be fair, actually, you said it there, the community social engagement piece. If nothing else, you're giving back.
Yeah.
And actually, a lot of the businesses I speak to, they want a whole business to get involved, not just that one person. It's like, as a company, we want everybody to reach out to these kids and stuff like that, so it can really benefit your employees, because you get a lot from giving back. And if you volunteer for a charity or anything you do like that, giving back rewards you, doesn't it? So not only is it going to help that future talent, but actually your employees will gain a lot from it if they can get involved in that process. And it doesn't matter what their job is either, does it? Everybody's got something that they can give.
And certainly what I do see in schools is, right from strategic right down to the day-to-day operations, there is loads you can get involved in. You can just go into school and help kids read. You can go in at a strategic level and help them with their careers program if you want to. It can be an hour, a day, a month, a week, a year, as much as you like or as little as you like. It is just so important to engage with schools. And that is the benefit of working with them through NYBEP, is we can make sure and support that. We've got a volunteer sign-up form so people can start to think about how they do that. We've got staff members here that can come out and chat to you to see how best you'd like to engage and how we can support that. So there's lots and lots of ways and no barriers, really.
Brilliant. Do you know, I could sit and talk about this all day. I feel like me and you sometimes have a soapbox, because
we do.
We do. But it's vitally important that we work with the students, because they are the talent of tomorrow. So, we need to inspire them. We need to get them work ready. We need to do everything we can to support them. And watching, as you say, the devil in the detail in terms of the government's proposals in terms of what this work experience or experience of the workplace is going to look like. And you and I can support anybody with that. So, people can reach out to you, reach out to me, and if they want any extra advice or guidance. But hopefully, there's taken a lot from this. We've covered quite a bit with some really good pieces of advice for anybody who's watching or listening. It just takes me to say thank you so much for your time. It's been amazing.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.